Have you noticed how easy it is to feel behind and then instantly feel better the moment you buy a course? And here's the real question. What exactly did you just accomplish when all you did was hit checkout? Because if you're being honest, you already know the pattern. You see a gap in your life: money, health, business, confidence, discipline. Something feels unfinished. That discomfort sits in your chest like a low battery warning you can't ignore. So you do something that looks like progress. You invest, you commit, you get serious. And for a moment, your mind goes quiet. Relief. You even feel proud. But pause for a second and notice how fast it happens. No calendar changes, no habit changes, no skill increases. Yet, your internal pressure drops anyway, almost like the purchase didn't just buy a program, it bought you silence. And the silence feels so similar to progress that your mind doesn't bother distinguishing between them. So here's a follow-up question. That's simple but hard to answer honestly. If the course disappeared from your account tomorrow, would you feel like you lost information? Or like you lost the version of yourself you were about to become? But then a week passes. The course sits untouched in your library. The tabs close. The login link gets buried. And somehow, you still don't feel like someone who's procrastinating. You feel like someone who's in the process. Someone who's working on it. Someone who has a plan. So what are you actually buying in that moment? Is it knowledge? Or is it the sensation of becoming the kind of person who would use knowledge? If you're being honest, the surface answer is, I bought it because I want to learn. That's the socially acceptable answer, the clean answer, the answer that lets you keep your self-image intact. But the honest answer tends to sound more like, I bought it because I wanted to feel like I'm moving forward without having to feel the friction of starting. And the reason that answer feels uncomfortable is because it's true in a very human way. You're not trying to deceive anyone. You're trying to regulate something inside you: pressure, guilt, impatience, uncertainty. You're trying to stop the inner voice that says, you should be further than this. So let's contrast the two answers clearly. The surface answer is about information. I want to learn. The honest answer is about emotion. I want to feel less stuck. And once you see that, you start realizing why you can buy courses for years and still not become the person who follows through. Because the purchase solved the emotional problem first. The course was supposed to solve the practical problem later. And later is exactly where it keeps dying. Because the moment you buy the course, something in you treats it like completion, not logically, chemically. Your brain gives you a dopamine reward as if you've already begun the transformation, as if the purchase is the work, as if ownership equals progress. So let me ask you something uncomfortable, but precise. When you buy a course, do you feel temporarily fixed? Not fixed as in solved, fixed as in stabilized. Like the anxiety quiets down just enough for you to stop looking at yourself so closely. And if that's true, then what you're actually purchasing might not be education. You might be purchasing relief. And if you can buy relief on demand, why would your nervous system rush toward the part that requires effort, confusion, humility, and repetition? Here's the part most people don't notice. Starting a course isn't just watching lesson 1. Starting is agreeing to enter a space where you won't be instantly good. You will misunderstand things. You'll realize what you don't know. You'll see the gap between the ideal version of you and the current version of you. And that gap can feel like a threat, especially if you've been using purchases to avoid feeling it. So the next question becomes, if you felt the same relief after finishing the course as you felt after buying it, would you still keep abandoning them? Or would you finally realize the truth? The relief you keep chasing is cheaper at checkout than it is in consistency. Look at your patterns, not as flaws, but as information. How often do you buy a course during a moment of emotional pressure? Late at night? After a bad day? After a hit to your confidence? After watching someone else succeed? After a scroll session where you suddenly feel like your life is falling behind other people's lives? And how often do you start a course during a calm, structured moment when your mind is quiet and your identity isn't threatened? What does it tell you? That the purchase tends to happen at peak discomfort, but the learning requires low discomfort and high consistency. And what does it tell you? That your excitement is loud at checkout and quiet at the first lesson? Here's a pattern most people recognize but downplay. You don't avoid the course because you're lazy. You avoid it because starting it would create evidence. Evidence that you can follow through, or evidence that you can't. Evidence that you're capable, or evidence that you're not as disciplined as you like to believe. And there's another pattern hiding underneath that one. You might be addicted to preparation more than you are committed to practice. Preparation feels clean. Practice feels messy. Preparation lets you imagine yourself as someone who does the thing. Practice forces you to meet the version of you who still struggles to do it. So instead of collecting evidence, you collect options. You collect potential. You collect someday. You collect the idea that you're one good week away from changing your life. And that can look incredibly productive from the outside. But inside, it quietly trains you to associate growth with buying, not becoming. So ask yourself this: when you buy a course, do you feel like you're protecting your future or postponing the present? So what's the question behind the question? It isn't really, why don't I start the course? It's more like, do I trust myself to follow through when nobody is watching and the novelty is gone? Or even sharper, am I someone I can rely on? Or just someone with good intentions and good purchases? Because every unstarted course isn't just a missed opportunity. It becomes a tiny, silent negotiation with your self-image. You don't say it out loud, but something in you registers it. I bought it, I meant it, and I still didn't show up. And the more times that happens, the more your mind adapts by protecting you from the discomfort of that truth. Not by changing your behavior, by changing your story. You begin to say things like, I'm just busy, or I'm waiting for the right time, or I'll dive in when I can focus. And those statements sound reasonable, but they do something subtle. They keep your identity safe from being tested. Because if you never start, you never have to find out what happens when you try. If you start and quit, you can say, it wasn't for me, or I got what I needed. And you never have to admit the more threatening possibility that you folded under the weight of consistency. And that's the pivot most people avoid. The real fear isn't failing publicly. The real fear is proving privately that you don't keep promises to yourself. Because once that's proven, you can't talk yourself out of it with optimism. You either rebuild trust or live with the quiet doubt. So why does this question feel uncomfortable? Because modern life trains you to treat discomfort like danger. The moment something feels heavy, your hand reaches for a screen. The moment something feels slow, your mind looks for something new. The moment something threatens your identity, you're offered 10 ways to feel better instantly. Another video, another feed, another purchase, another fresh start. And the course industry fits perfectly into that rhythm. It doesn't just sell education. It sells a clean emotional experience. Hope without friction. A new identity without the embarrassing middle part where you don't know what you're doing yet. And culturally, we've normalized this. We call it self-investment. We praise the intention. We love the aesthetic of growth, book covers, notes, dashboards, highlighted lessons, because it signals improvement without requiring transformation. So when you feel the discomfort of starting, confusion, resistance, boredom, uncertainty, you interpret it as a sign something is wrong. But what if that discomfort isn't a warning? What if it's the entrance? What if the only reason it feels like not you is because your identity has been trained to avoid anything that creates measurable proof? And what if your phone has quietly become the emergency exit you run to every time you're about to confront yourself? So what changes when you stop dodging the question? Not motivation, not hype, not disciplined speeches, clarity. Because once you admit what's happening, once you see that buying can mimic progress, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the difference between feeling like you're moving and being in motion. You start noticing how quickly your mind reaches for the dopamine of new when the work turns repetitive. And something else shifts too. The relief becomes different. The relief stops coming from, I bought something. It starts coming from, I did something. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly, with proof, with a reality attached to it. And that's when daily decisions begin to feel heavier in a good way. Because you realize you're always choosing what you want your identity to be built on, potential or evidence. You begin to feel how different your day becomes when you stop negotiating with yourself, when you stop using future plans as a substitute for present action, when you stop treating someday As a personality trait, the most surprising part isn't the productivity. It's the calm that comes from alignment, because you're no longer carrying the mental weight of unfinished promises. Now here's where the pressure gets real, without raising the volume. Because whether you start the course or not, you are setting a standard. Every time you buy and don't begin, you reinforce a private rule. I can't invest in myself without showing up for myself. Every time you buy the next course, instead of finishing the last one, you reinforce another rule. All I can. Chase the feeling of progress instead of earning capability. And repetition matters more than intensity. Not the size of the purchase, not the quality of the instructor, not how life-changing the program is, just the repeated gap between intention and action. Because over time, that gap becomes your identity. And here's the brutal part. You don't just lose money. You lose credibility with yourself first. And once you don't believe your own promises, you start designing your life around that disbelief. Smaller goals, softer commitments, more some days, more purchases that let you feel like you're becoming someone without having to risk becoming them. And standards don't form in a single moment. They form in the quiet, in what you allow to repeat, in what you tolerate from yourself, in what you keep calling temporary, even though it's been true for years. So let's end where we started, with a question that doesn't let you escape cleanly. Not, what course should you buy next? Not, how do you stay motivated? But this, are you using course, buying to build skill, or to protect yourself from the moment you might discover you don't follow through? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. Because that discomfort is the only honest place to start. So the question that stays with you is this. When you look at your library of some days, are you collecting tools for your future? Or collecting excuses to avoid proving who you are right now? And one more question, quiet but unavoidable. If your purchases have been your way of saying, I'm serious, what would your life look like if your consistency became your way of proving it?